So now we're going to look at how to post to the general journal. First of all, there are already some transactions on the journal, so I must start by putting in what the balances are at this stage, and that is the information they give me here. Under debtors control, I've got a debit of 275 and a credit of 120, and under creditors 207 and 320. So I must first put that in. Now on the answer book, it is already done, so let's just check. And there you can see they put them under debtors, the 275 and the 120, and under creditors 207 and 320, and we just call them totals. Then we're going to do the transactions that are in there. So if it's not that, make sure you put them in on the answer sheet. So let's go back to the question. So we'll get to the cash a bit late, to miscellaneous transactions. Okay, Chelsea Limited charged interest at 15% on our overdue account. So we owe them money. If we owe them money, it means they're a creditor, and now they're charging us interest because we are overdue, and of 180 for 4 months. So our account is 180. We're going to pay 15% interest on that, but only for 4 months. So let's first work out what that should be. Okay, so let's just get down there. The interest, we owe them 180 Rand. On that, we need to pay 15% interest, so it's 15 over 100, but not for a whole year. It's 15% per annum per year, but we only owe it for 4 months. So we must pay interest for 4 months, and that is 4 over 12. So if I do that calculation, it will give me 9 Rand. So the interest that I must pay them is 9 Rand. Okay, let's look at who am I owing the interest to? To creditors, to the creditor, and that is a creditor's control. First work out the accounts. What do I owe them? Interest. Interest expense, or interest on overdue account. Just call it interest expense. A creditor, if we follow the same steps as what we did with the other, here we've just got to figure out the two accounts. We cannot read them down from the list. A creditor, we said, is a liability. I owe them more because they add interest to my account, and I make a liability more on the credit side. Interest expense, the name tells me it's an expense. I've now got more expenses to pay, and we increase an expense on the debit side. Must be the opposite, a credit and a debit. You cannot end up on 2 credits or 2 debits. So I'm going to debit interest expense. So on my journal, right up against the line, I put the debits. The credits I'm going to put inward a bit. But right up against the line, interest expense. And it's a debit of 9 Rand. And I said I'm going to credit the creditor. If I put through any transactions for a creditor or a debtor on the general journal, I don't put in there debtors control or creditors control. I put the name of the debtor or creditor. So I must go and look at what the name of this creditor is. It was Chelsea Limited. Chelsea Limited. And it is a 9 Rand credit. If one of these are a debtor or a creditor, I must also put it under either debtors or creditors. Now, Chelsea is a creditor, so I must go to creditors. In the same column, I must put that 9 Rand. So under the general ledger, it was 9 Rand credit. So under the creditors ledger, it will also be 9 Rand credit. Only on the line where I've got the name, not next to interest. Interest is not a debtor or a creditor, so I don't put anything to the right there. So it's only a 9 Rand credit under creditors ledger. Good, so that was number A. B, a check issued to LP Builders for 500 for repairs was recorded in creditors control column of the CPJ and posted accordingly. In other words, posted to creditors control. But they're not a creditor. What should it be? Repairs. So let's see how to fix it. So fixing errors. Incorrect. What did I do? I posted something to the creditors control. And that was what. How did I post it to creditors control? Let's just go back and see exactly. A check issued. In other words, it's a payment that I made. If I make a payment, it means I would make my creditors less. So I made my creditors less with the 500 that I paid. What side did I make a creditor less? On the debit side. It is and how will I fix it? Let's just put there. Fix it. To get it out of there, I must do the opposite. So I debited creditors control. To now fix it, I must credit it. What should it be? It should be repairs. And repairs is an expense. And I've got more expenses. In other words, to make expenses more, I need to debit expenses. So this is my fix. I need to credit creditors control and debit repairs. So let's put it in. Go to repairs, debit side, repairs. And what was the amount? Let's just make sure. 500 Rand. So 500 Rand in the debit column. And I need to credit creditors control. So I'll put it a bit inward. Go. But if I don't put in creditors control, I've got to put in the name. LP Builders. LP Builders. 500 Rand. If I've got a name in there, in other words, either a debtor or a creditor, must come under the subsidiary ledgers, the debtors or creditors ledger. Only